Jimmy in Texas.
Hey, how's it going, Eric?
Not great, man. Not great.
Bring us back.
I heard
Jimmy.
that last call. All right, I'll try to. Well, I wanted to defend Antonio's dropped call. You guys asked him to define spirituality, and you wanted to try to find common ground. And you brought up how you felt that science and spirituality were separate enterprises. So I was going to speak to you. Maybe you're familiar with that, Eric, because I know I've called him before and I've spoken about it to you before. The neuroscience of religion, where, they're neuroscientifically trying to investigate what, neuroscientists today are calling mystical experience. I believe that's the best context in which you can define these spiritual experiences. And
Okay.
I'm not too sure how far you've looked into that research.
So I can tell you that since we've talked, I have not looked into it more. And I can also tell you that before we talked, I looked into it a lot.
Okay, well...
And so if we're saying that somebody identified something as a mystical experience, fantastic. The parts that we care about are where people are saying, there's otherworldly, supernatural, magical kind of stuff. You can fall in love and say that's a mystical experience. Cool.
Well, that Matt Dillahunty had that same misconception when I called in back. I was the first caller for the first episode of 2019. I'm the first guy to get hung up on by Matt Dillahunty too, but that's beside the point. But he had that same misconception that these volunteers are calling this, they're calling it themselves a mystical experience, when in fact none of the volunteers even use the word mystical or experience to describe what they're having in these type of states of consciousness.
Okay, so if that's the case, then either you have bad methodology or you have scientists who have said, here is the definition that we're functionally going to use for mystical experience. And fitting the definition that they created, they now were putting things into the bin that fit that definition. Do you have that definition available?
Yes, I do. The original definition in the context of this research, which has been going on for decades, and this research has been going on for decades, and it initiated with the work of William James in the early 1900s. He laid out the original definition for mystical experience, and it's been refined since then. As these studies have continued, it's been refined over decades of research. It's very concretely defined in this research.
Okay, so what's the most recent version of this definition? The most refined version after these decades?
It's pretty elaborate. I mean, I can try to quickly go through it, but they go by 6 characteristics that are definitive for what they call a complete mystical experience.
Okay, what are the 6?
The 6 criteria, the one is unity. In Eastern philosophy, this is known as non-duality. It's the interconnectedness of all people and things, all is one, or pure consciousness.
Wait, sorry, go on.
People
not go on. What? Wait, what?
Okay. This is a scientific community saying that they're controlling for oneness with the universe?
Yes.
And that's just one of 6?
Wait.
Yeah, that's just one of 6. It's a profound experience. And I mean, yes, they have to find some way to contextualize.
So wait. They're saying that the person who experienced this thing describes it in this way.
Yes, all volunteers who meet criteria for the complete.
Okay, so these are criteria for the description of a third person's personal experience.
These are criteria that are in a way universally described. In other words, what these people are describing has nothing to do with their personal history. They're outside the context of culture. They're outside the context of space and time.
Stop.
Time
out. What is outside of space and time, Jimmy?
And how do you measure it, much less put it into 6 categories?
Well,
is there anything out? Can there be outside of space and time? Is that even
It's one of the features. It's one of the definitive features of the complete mystical experience. It's invariably described by all the volunteers who meet the criteria. So they'll describe a timelessness, or they'll say it's beyond dimensionality.
Okay.
Or all time is frozen.
So I remember one night I'd meditated and I was feeling really good. And so I sat back and I did a psychedelic. And I laid back on the carpet and I looked up and I communed with my ceiling fan. This is a true story. My ceiling fan let me know they were happy to exist.
I would argue that that's not a complete mystical experience.
How dare you invalidate my experience, sir?
Well, no, because in your description, you necessarily have this subject-object dichotomy that you're someone.
He wasn't the ceiling fan.
No, I was part of this entire subset of existence where all things were happy to be there. What you're going to have to do is you're going to have to account for my absolutely bullshit experience and yours to be able to tell which one you're going to take into account, unless they're both equally true. And if that's the case, then you're not doing science, bro.
The researchers described this in the context of the research is, I mentioned it to you before, I don't know if you recall, but they related to what's known as the perennial philosophy, the perspective on the major religions, where they see these mystical states of consciousness at the very core foundation of the major religions, so that, the Christian mystic and early Christian mysticism, you would say the Holy Spirit or beatific vision or theoria to refer to it. Likewise, Sekhel Musla in Judaism or Nirvana in Buddhism. Or
so
Samadhi.
People have similar experiences that are unexplained, and some of them turn into religions because they're trying to explain them.
I wouldn't, phrase it that way. I think science has been trying to explain them. We do understand them to a certain degree.
We're calling them mystical experiences because we can't explain them. If we could explain them, they wouldn't be called mystical experiences.
I think they're calling them mystical experiences because they're recognizing them as a universal phenomenon in consciousness, which has been happening for millennia. In this fashion, within this view of the perennial philosophy, that's how it's perceived.
Okay, give me the name of the scientific organization. I'm going to Google it while you talk to me.
It's Johns Hopkins is the university where this research is taking place, and they have the ongoing studies there.
What's the name of the group? Help me here. What am I typing into Google?
Spiritual practices, the CSP.
TST.
Yeah. It's a team of researchers that was put together by, I believe, Robert Jesse, and Dr. Roland Griffiths is one of the leading neuroscientists there.
Okay, Johns Hopkins University has the talent search testing. That's TST.
Okay, I said CSP.
CSP?
Yes, Council on Spiritual Practices.
Okay.
Is the name of the team of researchers.
Council on Social...
So this is psilocybin research.
Yes, psilocybin research that's occurring there, but it's
okay.
It's based on earlier research.
Is this entirely limited to giving people drugs and having them talk about their experiences?
Not necessarily, because it's been related to other research throughout the decades where they investigated.
Lots of things can be related to other things, and we can investigate those individually. You're using this as an authority that we're looking at, so I'm looking at it.
No, what I'm saying, it's all interrelated research that's building on each other. The only reason why psychedelics have become a focus is because they realized that they can induce the same experiences that they were studying with the contemplative states, like the Tibetan monks entering meditation or the Carmelite nuns entering the contemplative state.
So you're saying that you can induce a brain state. Cool.
Yep, we know this.
What happens with meditation, with psychedelics, and it's a lot more facile to do it that way. That's why psychedelics it's prompted research all around the world.
Well, why? Who cares? If you say I give people drugs and they trip out the same way other people trip out, if they really focus on it, cool.
Well,
who cares?
I think,
why should I care, Jimmy?
It's kind of wrong to focus on the psychedelics themselves. It's even Roland Griffiths will say it's clear that this research isn't about psychedelics.
Jimmy, that's like saying, wow, I had 5 different people come in with the same kind of stomach pain because they were all kicked in the stomach by one person. And then you're saying ignore the person who kicked them in the stomach and try and explain the stomach pain in some other way?
No, I disagree. That's why I asked you guys to really. Eric said himself that he hadn't looked into it very much. All I ask is to properly examine it.
We are, and it's a drug research study, which is fine and interesting, but we can't ignore the fact that they're using drugs to get these states.
they've had atheist volunteers, and they showed
Atheists also trip out. It's a thing.
Yeah, you just talked to
but they
one who
showed
gave
that
you
these-
an example.
a majority of the atheists in the studies no longer identify with atheism after this event. So I believe it has more implications than you may realize, and you may want to look into it a little bit more.
I really am trying to find a thread through here where we can have some objective reality.
Yeah, you said you wanted to define spirituality. Is defining spirituality going to be based on this study? Are you saying that this study defines spirituality by these 6 characteristics?
I would say look into the 6 characteristics. I didn't really get into them without it being mocked, like initially. Yeah. But I would say that, these neuroscientists, they're very serious about what they're doing. And, I mean, these descriptions may have sound funny to you, but I would say it's probably because you haven't had an experience like this. And, these criteria, they have been well defined over decades of research. And, you could read them for yourself.
Wow.
I don't need to experience it. So that's like saying I don't understand racism unless I experience racism. I can absolutely understand it. And I don't have to have somebody.
Analogy, but all right.
So
also, how serious someone is while they're doing research has no indication on how useful that research is.
I'm looking for any kind of published numbers where they say where they talk about their methodology and what they counted as a hit and what counted as a miss and how large their sample size is. I'm not seeing anything in here.
Double-blind studies that have been going on
for
about 2000 and at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, Maryland, University of Medicine.
Right, he's on the site. He's looking at the study on the site, and he's not finding anything.
They're explained. I mean, if you're just glossing over it, of course you're not going to quickly find it. But I mean, these are double-blind trials that have been going on for a while now.
So
they prompted research.
So wait, how would someone engage in a double-blind trial for drug use? There's half the people not taking drugs and half are?
Yeah, that's so everyone has to be unaware of what's being administered, from the nurses to the doctors to the volunteer, and it's not revealed till the study's done.
Okay.
That's how the double-blind method works.
I don't understand why they would need a double-blind study to come up with 6 criteria and sort experiences into.
No, the criteria had been developed prior to the double-blind method is because they're using psilocybin, but the criteria for developed in the earlier decades.
You said to ignore the fact that they were using psilocybin. So you're using.
No, I meant to ignore the fact. Don't focus on psychedelics as though that's the point.
But that's what they're doing in the study, right? They're focusing on the drugs as if they're the point.
I've got them up, and I have gone through every single one of these links, and there's only one of them that has an abstract. There's only one that has actually been a study with people, and the only thing that it says there is that they wanted to see if there was a link between where is it? Hold on just a second. Here we go. Does it boost your immune system? And so let's ask that question. If me having a drug-induced experience boost my immune system, does that point toward the existence of a spiritual world? I mean,
I don't think that was one of his Griffith studies, but
I'm on their website. Do entheogen-induced mystical experiences boost the immune system by Thomas B. Roberts?
It's a different person.
This is the CSP website. I'm on the site right now. I looked through all of the links, and the only writing that comes up has nothing to do with your point.
If you're using Google to search if you're on the CSP website, the Council on Spiritual Practices, run a Google qualifier search for perennial philosophy, and you'll see the peer-reviewed material which talks about this stuff.
Okay, so then csp.org is swing and a miss.
Yeah, you would have to write in Google site : and then the URL for the CSP website, and then in quotations write perennial philosophy. That's how you use the Google qualifiers.
Yeah, but you're
my concern here though is that we are all over the place. Okay, we're all over the place. The fact that they are doing
back to the point.
okay, so the fact that they are doing this research is interesting, and I'd be interested to read about this research. But I'm not taking a small team of people who are administering drugs and psychedelics to people to determine their experiences using philosophy and creating a criteria out of what William James
I don't think
is.
that's necessarily what they're doing. I think you're getting confused by the word philosophy and perennial philosophy. It's also known as the perennial wisdom or perennialism. It's a perspective on the major religions, which they see as consistent with what they're finding with, investigating these mystical experiences.
Okay, so they're trying to scientifically explain religious phenomena.
Yes, in neuroscientific terms, and yes, that's basically what they're trying to achieve.
And they've said that taking drugs like psilocybin
gives you these mystical experiences. Cool, we agree on that.
The finding was that they're biologically normal. So these experiences that mystics have called theoria or nirvana and so forth is a natural phenomenon in consciousness.
Well, people can trip out. Cool story, bro. What does that matter? Why? People messing with their brain chemistry doesn't give you truth. It just gives you people who commune with their ceiling fans.
Well, I wouldn't equate, mystical experience to messed up brain chemistry. This is a natural phenomenon within us. People who've had this experience, they describe it as the clearest of the clearest, the surest of the surest, ultimate truth.
Okay.
It's more real than real. And
that
I don't know.
makes no sense.
Hold on.
My brain is not even comprehending more real than real. You do understand that you're talking to two skeptics, and you buckshotted a whole bunch of sophistry. That is
my own mystical experience.
I don't care about your mystical experience, Jimmy. Is your mystical experience going to convince me? And what is it going to convince me of?
Your mystical experience is going to convince you. That's my point. You don't simply just look into this research. If you really wanted to challenge yourself, you would volunteer into the research.
Dude, Jimmy, I've done the drugs,
Jimmy,
man.
are you trying to sell us drugs?
No. You see, that's only if you could also engage in meditation and so forth. I've heard you say, Eric, that you've tried it, man. But if you really wanted to do it in a shamanic setting, you would have to do what Terence McKenna was talking about with the heroic dose, or what Kalindi Ii is talking about with beyond the heroic dose. I doubt you've tried that, my friend.
So I just didn't do it right.
You were never tripping. You were never a Christian, and you were never tripping.
To re-examine
all of your
your experience, man. I am. I'm challenging you to double the dose. Yes.
Wow.
Dude, I might take you up on that for entirely different reasons, but that is regardless of the point, Jimmy. The point is, the point is we're not getting anywhere near.
Well, maybe
a reliable method to understand the world around us. All it is,
90 milligrams of DMT.
Jimmy,
to get to a point.
Jimmy, this is an acrobatic twisting of head up, rectum. How does this have anything to do? And I'm not saying you are that way. I'm saying this line of reasoning gets us nowhere, Jimmy. Why are we here?
Antonio,
I don't even know why we're here anymore, Jimmy. Why are we here? What is the point of this conversation if not to understand? Help me, Jimmy.
Sure.
Bring me back.
I think Antonio was trying to say it earlier when he said that you no longer identify with your body. You identify with all of nature. You see it as a unity. You have a utmost, complete, infinite love for everything.
Okay. Does that mean, what does that say about the actual universe we're in?
Well, when a mystic often comes back from this experience, they no longer regard, they don't see God as some entity, that's some bearded entity out there. They see
we're not saying that there's a bearded entity in the sky. We're just listening to people about what they have to say.
Sure.
So, what is your definition?
This is how I agree with this, because I've had this experience myself. You come back with a panentheistic understanding of the divine as opposed to pantheism. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about something a little bit more broad.
So how do you determine whether or not that viewpoint is true?
By this experience, I think.
By giving them drugs.
That's circular. You can't say this experience convinced me of the thing, and the thing is proven by the thing that convinced me. That's not how that works.
It may not work for you. You may not see the sense in it, but I would argue that you haven't had this experience. Like I said, I was an atheist prior to it. The reason why people perceive it as ultimate truth, the vantage point of the mystic.
I understand that you said you were an atheist. I get that. I don't think you were a skeptic. Or you may have put your skepticism on the shelf for a little while. But I don't think we're going anywhere with this conversation, man.
I think if you have that attitude, Eric, that your show is going to be haunted by these type of calls. You're going to have people like me, Antonio, always bringing up DMT, spirituality.
Sure.
Until you have it yourself. Until you finally do DMT for yourself or something, then it's like Matt said. He won't understand this experience until he has it, and until then, it's going to be necessarily gobbledygook. You know.
Well, we can agree on that.
And so long as you're here to call, we'll be here to answer, Jimmy. We'll be here to answer.
All right. Well, like I said, just if you don't mind, just looking into it a little bit, and that's all. And if maybe I'll call again and see if you ever bother doing that.
Okay. Here's my question, Jimmy. If I now go out and do a bunch of drugs, and you call in and I say, Jimmy, I did a bunch of drugs, will you come back and say you didn't do enough drugs? You need to do more drugs. You did it the wrong way.
I definitely wouldn't, man. But I would, encourage you to go into it a little bit more deeply, man. I don't think you've gone into it deeply enough.
I mean, challenge accepted.
We've heard that before, that you just haven't understood it enough, or you didn't go deep enough. It's the same talking points that theists give for everything. You didn't read the NIV, the ESV, the King James Version.
Take the advice. Don't just hear it. Take the advice.
I did, and all it did was waste a whole bunch of my time, because what it did is it just showed that they were finding a way to write me off because they didn't want to listen. So how are you any different?
Well, I have been listening. I do participate in a lot of atheist discussion. And
okay, so why are you? So you're writing off my experience because it doesn't fit your narrative.
I haven't heard the experience, And,
I told you.
He gave you a full account.
Communing with my ceiling fan. Remember that part? I did. You said I didn't.
Sure, but I mean, Graham Hancock would joke about parents saying communing with your washing machine, But I don't know. It's not enough. It's not a descriptive experience. At least Matt Dillahunty in our call,
I described what
he not enough,
the Holy
Eric.
Spirit.
Not enough.
This is your fault.
I obviously.
Well, yeah. I mean, you would have to. I mean, people if you've been looking at the research, the people who are a lot of their expressions are private, but the ones that have given permission for Roland Griffiths to use publicly, they're very elaborate. They go very.
Wait, so the majority of these personal experiences aren't even available to look at?
Yeah, the descriptions that the volunteers give, yes, they're not. They're private.
Yeah, that's not science, bro.
Yeah, I feel like this is yeah.
Yeah, so what I'd love for you to do is look up Miracle Mineral Solution. Miracle Mineral Solution is purported to be a cure-all. It's telling people to microdose bleach or chlorine. I think it's industrial bleach.
Yeah.
And they have been cherry picking for decades and have had to move their operations out of the country because it became, it was killing people. And the methodology that you're describing, no, it's not. The methodology you're describing is exactly the same. The methodology that you're describing is exactly the same. The methodology that you're describing is exactly the same. Please look up Miracle Mineral Solution.
I mean, it sounds, like some sort of thing, but I wouldn't compare it to microdosing psilocybin. They're two complete. I mean, I wouldn't compare beach.
But that's not what he's doing.
No, I'm talking about methodology. There's a reason why that doesn't work. I'm not arguing with you about the psilocybin itself. I'm arguing with you that you're using a bad method.
Well, even if you're assuming a flawed methodology, I would still say that's a false analogy. I mean, you're still trying to dismiss this out of hand when this is established research. Like, I don't understand that.
Because it's established by a flawed methodology.
I disagree.
Well, then we're going to have to disagree on that one. Please look up Miracle Mineral Solution. I feel like you're opening a space up in your life to be taken advantage of because...
You said you hadn't looked into the research, so...
I listened to you, dude. I listened to you, and I'm giving you an analogous example to explore.
I didn't really elaborate. I wasn't given a chance to, man. The second I pointed out one of the characteristics, it was automatically mocked.
Well, it should be mocked, Jimmy. It should be mocked. It doesn't have room.
The science should be embraced. The science should be embraced, not mocked.
No, connecting to the grand scheme of things and having a oneness with the universe is sophistry, Jimmy.
More real than real is not a quantifiable physical thing that we can measure, so it's not science.
You can dress it up as much as you want, but as long as you're using that language, no, dude.
It's quantifiable in the sense that it's invariably expressed by the volunteers that meet criteria for the continuous solution.
It's quantifiable because I can count people who said that they had this experience. I can count people that do drugs. Fantastic.
Well, it's a bit more complicated than that, man.
Well, I look forward to you calling in again with some other examples because this one didn't work for me. And Johns Hopkins Council on Spiritual Practices. I only found one thing, and it had nothing to do with your point. Well, everything else was a subjective article.
All I would say, it would be a disservice to discount what they're saying, man. And I would ask you to please re-examine it if you get an opportunity.
I'm not discounting the results. I'm discounting the why. Somebody tripping out, I'm not going to say, no, you didn't trip out. I'll say you tripped out, but if you're saying I tripped out and got this understanding of the universe and it's true, that's where I'm going to come in and say, no, you don't get to do that unless you have a good reason. And you haven't given a good reason other than a whole lot of people have done it. If a whole lot of people jump off a bridge, that doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. And it doesn't mean that you should advocate for other people to do it. You need to have good reasons. And just because a lot of people did it, and I counted a lot of them, and we've been counting them for a long time, is the exact same reasoning that Miracle Mineral Solution is still trying to give people bleach. And by the way, bleach enemas as well. It's killed children.
Well, so, that's fine, but
no,
that's not fine.
No, it's not. But anyway, Jimmy.
No, I said your assessment is fine. That's, if you want to consider it, if you want to construe it that way, that's fine. But that's definitely not how it's characterized in this research. I think we'd be giving people the wrong impression.
I think we've been on this call for a while, but...
Sure, man. It was nice. I appreciate it, man.
You know what? It is kind of fun. It is kind of fun. It gives us time and opportunities to show people where, hey, you know what? Just because an authority figure or it looks like an authority figure said something, when it breaks down, you need to understand how it's happening and why it's happening. And counting people who said a thing doesn't make, you can say, yes, they experienced this thing. That doesn't mean that they have access to reality. And it definitely doesn't mean that you can say more real than real. That's just not how any of this works.
I could say, hey, Jimmy, I ate a Tide Pod and had a mystical experience. You should go eat Tide Pods until you experience the same thing I did.
Tide Pods.
Right?
It happens only when people take high doses of psilocybin or something like that, or engage in meditation. In other words, the science can only demonstrate what it can demonstrate, and this is what it's demonstrated.
Yeah, people trip out, dude.
I'm just sharing it with you, and you're mocking it.
So
that's what I don't get.
Because we agreed with you that people tripped. We're disagreeing with you.
What I was saying, though. That's not what I was saying.
We're disagreeing with you that a oneness with the universe is something that you can quantify, is something that you can scientifically sit down and go.
Necessarily. Okay, but we're not talking about some kind of physical, quantifiable method to discern this.
Okay, so then we're not talking about science.
Yeah.
What we're saying is that this is what people invariably describe inside the so-called completeness.
Right. Christians invariably describe having experiences with Jesus Christ, their Lord and Savior. Do we take that as indicative of scientific reality too?
Well, see, this is precisely why I asked to look into it. That's not a complete mystical experience. That's in this research would be
that's a no true Scotsman argument.
If you're having a vision of something that you're relating to, you're still operating in the subject-object dichotomy. That's not a mystical experience. The mystical experience happens when that barrier breaks, when there's non-duality, when there's no longer the subject-object dichotomy.
No, I'm not trying to pass off seeing Jesus as having a mystical experience. I'm saying the methodology of saying many people describe a thing, therefore there must be some kind of supernatural explanation for that thing is not okay. And it's not okay if
That's also a straw man. I wasn't saying anything about the supernatural. I think a lot of atheists try to swindle it that way because they redefine that term to that which is not natural.
Okay, so you're not
completely natural phenomenon.
So you're not saying that this study has anything to do with a supernatural realm or anything outside of nature?
Not in the way that atheists define it, definitely.
Okay.
Well, this was a waste of time. Jimmy?
You may think so, man, but maybe you'll come back to it eventually.
Maybe I'll become a Christian as well. Jimmy, have a happy New Year, man.
Yeah, you too, brother. Thank you.
That was fun.
No.
I had fun.
I feel a little disheartened at the end there. It kind of sucked that out just a little bit. Because, I mean, if you're saying people had this experience, but it has nothing to do with reality, then why did you call other than to say, this is a cool thing, which I'll agree is a cool thing.
Right. Like, I'll read that. If I can find the study, I'll read it. But again, it's a cool thing that people experience similar things when they trip on similar drugs because our chemistry and biology is similar. Mm-hmm. And ... Yeah,
you can't really draw any more from that.
Right, exactly. And he got upset that we were assuming that he was trying to draw something more.
Yeah. There was somebody who called in, didn't want to hop on the air, but said that the article, they found it and it was being misrepresented. Hopefully I can get that link before we end the show.